The two greatest words in sports. Game 7, as big as it gets for the Pacers tonight, tomorrow, whenever you're listening, against the Knicks today. And we'll talk about it all, the mentality that will be required, why the game could be ugly, what it will take for the Pacers to win, the history of Game 7s, and much more on today's Weekend Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy weekend, Sunday, Saturday, whatever time of day it is, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we're talking Game 7. It's the only thing to talk about. It's as big as it gets for the Pacers. It requires another preview, despite the game being at 3:30 and this podcast having less shelf life than most. And I've been so frenetic all weekend. My graphic from yesterday's YouTube show said that the Pacers won a Game 7. They won Game 6, and now they're playing a Game 7 as big as it gets. And speaking of frenetic, that is what you can expect tonight. Game 7s are wild and unique and sometimes ugly, and sometimes stars will lead the day, and sometimes a role player cements their legacy. Either way, you remember these games forever. People still talk about, to me all the time, the little things that changed Game 7 of the last Pacers Game 7. LeBron ripping their hearts out in 2018. Can they have played Victor Oladipo the whole fourth quarter instead of that brief stretch early in the fourth? 4-point loss, as painful as it gets. That's what these kind of games can be. That's the kind of emotions these games can produce. And today, once again, or tomorrow, whenever you're listening, we get another one. Game 7, Pacers Knicks in the Garden. So much to get to today, and a lot of it's going to be about not basketball things, kind of basketball things, but not basketball things. And I say that to say, when I asked Tyrese Haliburton about what he's expecting or what he thinks this could feel like, it's a Game 7. It's his first Game 7, biggest game of his life. He's had a ton of those this season. The in-season tournament, semis were the biggest game of his life until he won and played in the in-season tournament finals. Then his first playoff game was the biggest game of his, well, then the regular season games to clinch a playoff game were the biggest games of his life. Then the playoff game, then the home playoff games, then the second round playoff games, then a big home second round playoff game, and now a Game 7 after an elimination game. Like, that is his reality, but that's a lot of Pacers players' realities who are in their first postseason. And that's the reality for guys who have been on good teams, but are now playing in bigger roles, like Aaron Nesmith, like Obi Toppin, like TJ McConnell, right? It's just different. It's going to be a whole new environment. Siakam's got experience in these. Myles Turner's played in 2 Game 7s. Nesmith's been a part of them. McConnell was on the Sixers for a Game 7, although he didn't actually play in the game. There's a lot of quasi-experience on the Pacers, but a few guys will really need to lead the way because they all said it's different, right? It just is. And I bring up Haliburton first as my segue to say Haliburton's watched them, and he's talked to other people who have experienced them and is in the NBA and knows that they're ugly games. They are grinded out, gritty, tough, different. Going back to Pacers Cavs from 2018, their last one, I mean, that was a 101-105 game. And, of course, that was a Nate McMillan team in lower scoring, but, I mean, Oladipo was crazy. Darren Collison got hot. The Pacers' third leading scorer had 14 points, right? It took that kind of effort from LeBron for the Cavs to get to 105, who was ridiculous. The Cavs' second leading scorer was Tristan Thompson. George Hill hitting a few shots was vital in that game, right? All these little tiny things that can cause whatever you want to call it, ugliness or chippiness or just a difference in mentality, make it a different kind of game. And I remember that game all too well. Everybody remembers everything from that game. It's still talked about because it's a Game 7, and if you win it, it cements you. Oladipo played 41 minutes in that game and had 30, 12, and 6 and was phenomenal. And people still bring up to this day that early fourth quarter stretch where he wasn't in the game. I can't remember exactly when he checked in, but I remember people still talk about that to this day, right? What if he had played more in the second half of that game? It might have been late in the third quarter where he came in with 10-15 to go in the fourth quarter. When the fourth quarter started, the Pacers were down 2. They were down 5 when he came in the game, and immediately the Cavs hit a 3 to go up 8. Who knows what happens if he starts the fourth quarter in the game? That kind of stuff lingers forever. Those kind of decisions become cemented. That's what a Game 7 is all about. Ugly, chippy, different. Every play matters. And a lot of players said the same thing, right? TJ McConnell, was there when Kawhi Leonard hit the bounce shot. He's seen crazy game sevens. Pascal Siakam's won a championship and was, of course, on the other side of that shot, but has also been a part of crazy game sevens in the bubble. Neesmith with the Celtics the year they made the finals. 2 crazy game sevens, I believe, that year. They said the team that plays hardest will win. And maybe that isn't totally accurate, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. Like, hard play and everything matters. And when you think about playing hard, you're thinking, and you play worse and different. And so they just become these ugly, gooky kind of games. Shout out to Derek Kramer, who did a great job with the history of game sevens. In his article, I'm going to read through a bunch of them now. Tyrese Haliburton's exact quote: "For a lot of us, is our first playoff experience, let alone game 7. We've got to be ready to go for 48 minutes. The Garden is an unbelievable environment. We haven't won there yet. We have to prove we're able to do that." Rick Carlisle, who's won his fair share of game 7, said, "It's the ultimate game." The ultimate game. Siakam called it gritty. Chronologically, first Pacers game 7, very fittingly, against the Knicks, 1994 Eastern Conference Finals, 94-90. Knicks win that one in the Garden. I mean, that was, of course, part of the ESPN 30 for 30s. I mean, all these Knicks Pacers. I wish we could get a sequel from this series. Reggie Miller led the scoring, but of course, Patrick Ewing was the hero in that one. 95, Pacers Knicks again in the conference finals for game 7. That one the Pacers did win, 97-95. That's the one where famously Ewing missed the, I don't even know what you call it, finger rolling layup, where his arm kind of extended as he finger rolled it to miss that one. That was the Pacers win. 1995 Eastern Conference Finals, after beating the Knicks in the conference semis that year, the Magic crushed the Pacers into game 7. Brutal for the Pacers there. And then the next year in the conference finals, Michael Jordan gets them in game 7. 1-3 in game 7s at that point, 88-83. Low scoring, and 3 of the 4 so far have been close. I mean, that's just what game 7s kind of are. 2005 Eastern Conference first round series. Pacers crushed the Celtics. That was Reggie Miller's final season. That team was not a necessarily championship caliber group, but they did win that game 7 in the first round to move on that year. 2013 conference finals against the Heat. Everybody, unfortunately, remembers that game 7, one of the worst Pacers game 7s I can remember. An ugly one, not a close one. Again, Heat destroyed them by 23. The next year, though, game 7 against the Hawks, the David West series, PG was good in the game 7. This is still the Pacers' last game 7 win to this day. How about exactly a decade ago? A lot of decade synergy for the Pacers, although it was a 1-8 series and the Pacers were down 2-3. Maybe not a series the Pacers should be excited about potentially repeating, but they did get that one done over the Hawks back then, 92-80. I don't know if I already said that. But that was their last game 7 win to this day, and they needed heroes in that series. That was May 3rd, 2014. David West was good, like I said, that whole series. But that game kind of sums up, right, what this takes. The Hawks were 11 for 44 from deep and shot 30% in that game, right? The Pacers were 3 for 18 from deep and had 17 turnovers, but they won. Ugly games. Game 7s are gross a lot of the time. If a team looks comfortable, they're going to win, right? That game was decided because Paul George was amazing with 30 points, and the rest of the Pacers starters followed suit, and nobody could even get close to matching that for the Hawks that year, right? Like, that's what game 7s can be. Pacers played a game 7 in Myles Turner's rookie year. They lost to the Raptors by 5. That was the Solomon Hill, the series in which he could have tied the 3 late in, I believe, game 5. It was after the buzzer. Pacers win game 6, lose game 7 in Toronto. And then their most recent game 7, of course, the one I mentioned off the top, the only one that has been covered by this podcast's existence, Pacers-Cavs 2018, the incredible Vic season. And LeBron was a hero that year. A lot of these were close, right? 9 game 7s for the Pacers, and I just named one within 4 and one within 5 and a couple more within a few points. I'd have to scroll back up to get to all of them, but you get the gist that that's what these can be, and that's what these are, and I don't need to keep running through them. You get the idea. Haliburton said it. Everybody's seen it. Everybody's done it who's a fan of basketball. Game 7 is different. It's a different game. It requires something different of players. So I can go through, and I will, a couple things that I think are key in this game. But what might be the most key is Pacers fighting through their instincts, right? Your instinct is going to be to think about playing hard all the time and making sure you're the hardest playing team. And that's all great. You have to be that to win. I'm not saying to suppress those feelings. I'm saying fight them in a way that lets you play free and not think and not worry about the moment. That's how the Pacers can win this game. Let's talk about the basketball stuff they need to do to win, what it will take, how it will even be possible against the Knicks team that's been tough for the Pacers all series long. Before we do that, though, let's talk about PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. More than 3 million members. You just pick more than or less than on 2 or more player stat projections. Watch the winnings roll in. The playoffs are rolling. And in the playoff action going on in the NHL and NBA, you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as the world's best players take the game to a new level during the postseason. 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into 1,000 basketball, hockey entries today on PrizePicks. All you got to do on PrizePicks, it's super simple. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of player and stat types. It's simple. You make your picks. You can do it in a minute or less. And it's, for example, Nikola Jokic, more than or less than 10 rebounds in a game. Caitlin Clark, who was awesome in her Saturday game, more than or less than 30 points. That's it. You combine those player stat types and watch your winnings roll in. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's PrizePicks. Download that app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day here on the weekend. Locked On NBA Draft / Big Board is back. You're going to need that with the draft coming up. Even from a non-Pacers perspective, the draft will be valuable. And they don't cover the top guys. They cover every guy. And the Pacers do have picks. We'll talk about that when they are actually out of the postseason, which they're not right now because they play a Game 7 this weekend against the New York Knicks. It's going to be awesome. Basketball-wise, what's this going to take? I think it's valuable the Pacers have Game 7 experience. Every team has some Game 7 experience. You know, the Knicks certainly have their own fair share. Precious Achiuwa. Off the top of my head, I could dig through more of their team. I'm sure DiVincenzo with the Warriors, I think, has Game 7 experience last year. Right. So, like, it's not new to new to everyone on either team. The home court advantage is going to matter. It's tough in that environment for a Game 7 already. But let's talk about the basketball part of this. The thing I want to focus on is the same thing that I focused on ahead of Game 6. Not to be boring, but I think it's even more important now because of something that happened in Game 6. And I touched on it yesterday, and I'll touch on it again. It's currently 4 o'clock, a little before that for me. And I bring that up to say the injury report for Game 7 is not released yet. I don't know what the status of Josh Hart is going to be, which is relevant to me because if he doesn't play or if he is limited in any way, Pascal Siakam is once again the most important Pacers player to me. Right, I led with Haliburton and Brunson ahead of Game 6 because those guys have the ball all the time, and they dictate how the game is played, and they are so massive and critical. And the Pacers slowing Brunson in the first half while Haliburton played pretty well was a key part of them winning that game beyond many things, and Brunson was way better in the second half. Pacers need to be better on him. We'll talk about that. But the thing that stood out to me in Game 5 was the small lineup the Knicks started with. The fact that Pacers didn't exploit that enough. Siakam is so much taller than whoever's guarding him. And if he's not, Myles Turner is. But often it was Siakam. They have to rely on that to be a weapon. And even if it's not a small guy, because Achiuwa's in there with Hartenstein, or Achiuwa's the only 5, but the Pacers go small, which they've been doing against that group with Top and Siakam frontcourts again, he has to punish those matchups. He has an advantage either in speed and skill or in just raw pull-up size, right? And he's had some games this series, many of them, where he's been able to exploit that. And sometimes that shot hasn't fallen for various reasons. And sometimes he hasn't been able to create as much wiggle or space that you'd expect. But he can and has and just did show in an elimination game that he can do that. And if the Knicks start the same group again, or Josh Hart can't start and they have to start Alec Burks or Achiuwa, he will have an advantage somewhere, right? And maybe it won't be every possession. Maybe the Knicks will do what they did at the end of Game 3, and then more often as the series has progressed, but not as much as I thought at all, and put Hartenstein on him. And then Turner has an advantage. And then Myles Turner has to be the one taking advantage of these matchups. He did so when he needed in Game 6, right? 6 for 10 for 17 points. That's great. He led the team in free throws, took advantage down low. That's what Myles Turner has to do when he gets those matchups. And he made some great passes quietly. But even if they do switch up the cross matches, 1, Hartenstein's not going to play the whole game. And 2, it's not going to be every time after stops when there's matching up in transition in various switching situations. Sometimes Siakam just dives his way into the post early in a possession when he sees an advantage on a switch. All that kind of stuff's going to be there throughout a game. If Pascal Siakam can't take advantage of those, it's going to be harder for the Pacers to manufacture buckets because the Knicks have done well, better than they only played 2 teams in the postseason, but better than most teams, at least making Haliburton's life hard to get into the paint, and Deuce McBride's done a good job denying him off the ball, and they did better to get it back to him, and Haliburton had a better Game 6. And if he plays that way again, that's good enough to win, as evidenced by the fact that they won Game 6. But Siakam's vital to me, again, for all the same reasons as Game 6, and the added factor of if Josh Hart is out, Josh Hart is the best of the small guys at containing him, right? And Turner, I think. If a different small is on Turner, if it's Alec Burks or someone else, Dante DiVincenzo on Myles Turner or Siakam, they're going to eat that up. They should eat that up, right? It's going to be what happens. So I'll be fascinated to see how much the Pacers can exploit that. Or if they don't have Hart, I don't know. Again, I don't know. If they do have Hart still, if he's limited or hobbled in any way, can they attack that in a way that's meaningful for them, that actually generates a big advantage? That, to me, is the X factor of Game 7, is they have a mismatch that exists before the game even starts. And if Achua starts again, which I don't expect that, I think the Knicks will stick with their smaller group. It's been more effective. But if Achua starts again, then the second unit should be feasting for the Pacers. They did in Games 3 and 4. And there's a reason Knicks went away from starting Achua. It wasn't working very well. They didn't get enough spacing for Brunson. But if Achua starts and Brunson cooks, the Pacers might be in trouble. But if Achua starts, then Siakam's skill and speed advantage have to be used. Put Achua in pick and rolls, let Haliburton attack that, see if he makes mistakes, and go from there. So there's not a good answer for the Knicks. If Hart is available, if he isn't available, or if he's limited, and the Pacers have to take advantage of that. Their depth and speed was talked about as an advantage before the series even started. And that was before Mitchell Robinson got hurt. That was before OG Anunoby got hurt. That was before Josh Hart got hurt. Now they have that even more. And the Knicks are scrappy and they never give up, and they're so tough, and they fought through all these injuries all series long, and it's been very impressive and noble. At what point can they not do it anymore? Well, Pascal Siakam's going to be the answer to that question to me, and he was in Game 6. He was the best player on the floor. He got it done when it mattered. He was very tough to guard. His size was overwhelming, and it led the Pacers to a win. That is, to me, the basketball key to Game 7. And the stars typically can be important. That's why Vic had 30 points. That's why I just mentioned Paul George having an amazing game the last time the Pacers won a Game 7. That's why Brunson containing him will be valuable. That's why Haliburton's going to be important. The stars are the guys. Patrick Ewing missing a shot. Reggie Miller making shots. I mean, I can go back through all of Pacers history in these Game 7s. Jermaine O'Neal was very good in that random Celtics game. Like, you get the gist. Read Derek's article. He's got it all covered. They have to get good star play, and Siakam is their best chance of that, I think, given the matchups that will be in front of him. And there's going to be more, though. Role players matter. Big shots from role guys. Who's going to step up there? Let's close out today's show talking about that. Before we do that, though, let's talk about FanDuel, because it's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150. That's a lot in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 to bet on spreads or money lines or player props or whatever else. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count for FanDuel. Again, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, including the Pacers, including Game 7s, including the NBA, including the NHL. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for that offer. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Locked On NBA will have all the latest stories from around the NBA, including an episode after Sunday, which has Game 7s for not only the Pacers, but also Wolves, Nuggets. Talking about that, other news and notes from around the NBA. The lottery happened. The draft combine's over. There's going to be lots of scuttlebutt about everything. Locked On NBA will have all the coverage of that. Let's keep going on the Pacers. Role players matter so much in these games, too. Darren Collison, 23 points. That was big. He hit some threes in Game 7 of Pacers Cavs a few years ago. George Hill off the bench. Tristan Thompson on the glass. That was just looking at the box score. I remember some of that series, too. You know how the Pacers got to that Game 7? Bojan Bogdanovic evolved from role player to very good player in Game 3 of that series. Never forget it. 30 points in a 92-90 win, I believe. Was that a crazy game? I think Aaron Nesmith is my guy that I'm looking at for. If I'm the Pacers, he's got to be good again. He was really good in Game 6. Made all of his twos, got to the rim a little bit on cuts, and even when he got ran off the line, didn't make his threes. That's going to happen eventually, I think, for him. but he hit the glass, 6 boards, 3 on the offensive end, 4 assists. The whole Pacers team kept the ball moving. Defense on Brunson, very good. Matchup data is probably in. I could just look at this now. Among the best Brunson defensive games we've seen from the Pacers in this postseason. If he can do that again, easier said than done, as always. That's huge. 1, because that he was good in the game, obviously. But 2, because slowing Brunson is the thing for the Pacers for so much of the series. Brunson, 6 for 12 guarded by Nesmith, actually better than I thought in that game. But the Knicks offense, 33 points on 27 possessions. That's not spectacular. That's good stuff in a general concept. And I think Nesmith was a big part of that. So, that's 28.1 possessions. I'm very bad at math. So credit to Nesmith for that. He did better in that matchup than he has or anyone has throughout the series, very notably. And McConnell did very well as well. 1 for 4 was Brunson guarded by him. And then the Knicks 17 on 16 possessions in those moments. So perhaps those two both fit the billing of what I'm trying to say here. Because if the stars are valuable and a role player needs to step up, the role player guarding Brunson, whoever it is the most valuable one for the Pacers. That's going to be the biggest thing. Duh. I feel like I'm repeating a lot of the same topics in Game 6. And the reason I'm doing that is a lot of the stuff that mattered in that game, the Pacers did well in. And that helped them win that game and force this game. But in a Game 7, you just remember those kind of performances from guys who either establish themselves or elevate themselves to a new status. And Nesmith, McConnell, whoever's guarding Brunson's going to be big to me. But the glass work the Pacers did in Game 6 is going to be relevant again, too. They were way better with their box outs. They had a spirited film session, which is my nice way of describing it. None of them said it was fun. It can't have been fun. They probably got lit up, and they should have. They were awful and had no effort in Game 5. Much better on the glass in Game 6. Hartenstein had 7. Myles Turner had 8. Siakam had 7. Josh Hart had 8. That's a wash. Good job by the Pacers there, who've been getting killed there. The guards were where the difference was. 6 for Nesmith, 6 for Nembhard, 6 for Haliburton, keeping the rest of the Knicks off the glass. Those guys everybody's been really feasting for New York, but to get those guys going on the glass, a lot of offensive boards for those guys, but Haliburton's were all defensive. Obi Toppin did better on the glass. Ben Shepherd had 4 boards. Everybody contributed in that way. And if everybody's contributing, that usually means box outs have been good, but that also can mean a lot of stuff. They were better at tipping it safely instead of just losing those fights. They did a lot of stuff way better, and they took care of the ball, as I said yesterday. Only 1 turnover for everybody that played, 8 total for the Pacers. Dominated the possession battle. After shooting 29 less shots, they took 9 more in this game, and the free throw battle kind of skews that in this one, but that was all very important, although they didn't do a good job forcing turnovers. Only 7 for the Knicks, and 3 of them from Deuce McBride. So that little stuff will matter just as much in this game. But the X factor to me, it's Haliburton. It's Tyrese Haliburton. Not because of him being a star, not because of the role player factor, because he's going to have the ball a lot. And this is the biggest game of his life. What's he going to do? How can he respond? What kind of answers will the Knicks have for him? They've been good at, throughout the series, sprinkling in different stuff on him, right? They defended him early in the series. One way, he figured it out. Then they had to defend him a different way. He was already all over it. Then they changed their starting lineup. That actually slowed him a bit. Maybe not necessarily because of the lineup change, but just in general, his approach to that game was not as effective. If he's ready to go, if he's getting 2 feet in the paint right away, if his passes are crisp, if guys are making shots from his passes, which isn't necessarily on him, but he can help with that, right? That's huge. And of course, him himself finishing plays is massive. I think you'll be able to tell very quickly in this game what kind of Haliburton game you're getting, right? He was aggressive early in Game 6. And I meant aggressive early in Game 6 from a scoring perspective in a way that, he took 3 shots in the first quarter, but they were all good. He got his feet in the paint a bunch. He had 4 assists very early. I think he had the first 3 of the game for the Pacers, right? And that kind of continued throughout the game, but almost half of his assists in the first quarter, he spread his shots out, right? Playing like that, again, is going to matter so much. If he's passive at all early, the Knicks will know, and they will attack him, and they will make his life hard, and they will look good in this game. And all this stuff that I've talked about is going to matter. And I think it's going to be some intangible thing that ends up being the difference. 50-50 balls, turnovers, rebounding, fouls, stupid mistakes, 8-second stuff, throwing the ball all over the gym. It's a Game 7. I could talk about the basketball part all I want, the mental part, all that from the beginning, I think will be the difference. And I cannot wait to see it. I'll be in the Garden again. I'll podcast from there right after, as we've been doing throughout the series. And we'll talk about what happens and perhaps talk some Celtics if we need to, perhaps look ahead to what's coming for the Pacers if they don't win. but we don't need to look ahead right now. We can't. What matters for the Pacers is what happens on Sunday. We'll be there to cover it all here on Locked On Pacers. I'm on Twitter at Tony R. East. This show's there at Locked On Pacers. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Enjoy Game 7. We'll see you when it's over.